Well, good morning again, great souls. My name's Bryan, if those of you who don't know me, and this is my wife, Carmenza, and it's our joy to be giving service today. This reading is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda, which is commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. This is week 24, How Devotees Rise. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we asked the question, why do devotees fall? And we considered the downfall of Judas in this context. Jesus, in answer to Judas's criticism for allowing Mary to rub his feet with spikenard, a very costly ointment, said, "The poor always ye have with ye, but me ye have not always." Jesus is here saying that there is one supreme injustice that needs eradication. Poverty, yes, but not of the material kind. Poverty in a spiritual sense. Divine blessings are not common in this world. They are extraordinary. When they come, we should give them priority above every other consideration. Never allow a moment of inner joy, for instance, to be set aside for lesser duties. Divine attunement is our highest priority. As Lahiri Mahashaya, the guru of Yogananda's guru, said, to listen to the heart's inner sound, Om, which issues from the very center of our being, is man's highest duty. Mary, on this occasion, was not communing in inner silence with Christ's Spirit, as she had been when Martha urged Jesus to reproach her for not helping out in the kitchen. Mary this time was serving outwardly, but in a very different spirit from the restless fussing for which Jesus had reprimanded her sister Martha. Those who see a radical difference between the paths of action and meditation should understand this distinction. To serve in the right spirit is necessarily, for only thereby can we overcome our karmic tendencies towards restless activity. The important thing is that the spirit be always inwardly focused, that in everything we do, we act in loving service to the Lord. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 3rd chapter, the state of freedom from action, that is, of eternal rest in the spirit, cannot be achieved without action. No one, by mere renunciation and outward non-involvement, can attain perfection. Whenever the Spirit of God descends upon you, however, remember the words of Jesus, "Me ye have not always with you." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. How do devotees rise? You know, when I first came to Ananda many years ago, I had the feeling that I didn't really belong, and it really wasn't for me. I didn't really fit and feel familiar. But luckily there was a couple of threads that kind of allowed me to stay there until I kind of got over myself in certain ways. And one of those threads was I had been practicing yoga postures for about 20 years at the time I came. And so I thought, oh, this is something I know a little bit about and I have a little bit experience with. But the other thing, and maybe the more important, was the revelation about the yugas and the idea that we are in a yuga, in a time or in an age where consciousness is raising, where things are getting better. And just having the sense that things are getting better, even though they're not great, when they're not great, but they're headed in the right direction, was so important to me, and again, kind of allowed me to access these teachings. So the yugas, I don't have time to explain. I've been rereading the Yuga book, which came out about 13 years ago, and one of the co-writers was living here in Sacramento, Ananda community, when he was working on that book, Biasa Steinmetz. And it's interesting reading this book because the yugas are about briefly, they're a 24,000 year cycle of changing consciousness on this planet of Earth. And Sri Yukteswar not only revealed the yugas to us, but actually put them in their proper time frame, because there had been some confusion about this from the old Vedic teachings. And so the age that we're in is increasing in energy, increasing in consciousness for the whole planet, the average person on the planet. There's always, in every time, people who have individual consciousness that's much higher than the mass consciousness. But we're in the second yuga of 4, where we're ascending out of the low point of consciousness, which was around 500 AD. It's about 1,500 years ago. And we're well into now what's called the energy age, or called Dwapara Yuga. Dwapara is a Sanskrit word, but it's an age of energy. And it's very interesting to us to think about this question of how do devotees rise in terms of energy. Because one of the keynote aspects of Dwapara Yuga, that the age that we're in, is that energy awareness has increased. And it's the realization that energy underlies matter. And these revelations, I'm sure you're familiar with from the early in the last century in physics, and figuring out that energy and vibratory is the real underlying nature of the universe. And Paramahansa Yogananda came to us as the avatar of this energy age. And so the teachings that he has given us are energetic oriented. So we have some new teachings and some revelations about the old teachings in a way that we can think about them and approach them as energy, not just as rigid, fixed matter. So we have the energization exercises, for instance, where we think of our body as kind of like a battery, and we can recharge our body by doing these exercises. And we did a little mini version of that between the chants this morning, where we tense the body and then relax it. And yet the energization exercises are really a new teaching, a new revelation. We have the way that we do yoga postures. We have affirmations, which emphasize the consciousness, the energy flow, and not just the physical postures of yoga postures. We have the ability to think about money in terms of energy, because money really is just energy. It's not a fixed object. It's not the gold that you have hidden under your floorboards. It is an energy flow. And when we think about money as an energy flow, this is very liberating for us in terms of raising our consciousness. We don't get stuck and rigid in the old thought forms. One of the practices that we can use, one of the techniques, is tithing. And tithing is, I think the word tithe means a tenth, and tithing is giving the first 10%, giving 10% of your earnings in money to God. And tithing is usually done by giving money to a church. It doesn't have to be, but and so tithing is this spiritual practice. It's a way of spiritualizing even activity that we do to earn money that is egoically motivated. It spiritualizes that, because it says, really it reflects the truth more, that our wealth is not created by us alone. We aren't the heroes of our story. We aren't the sole heroes of our story. We aren't the sole earners. That the wealth really comes to us ultimately from God. And to pass that on for a church or for an organization where the aspiration and the reason for that organization is to help others individually raise their energy towards God. This is, it's helpful for the church, but it's more helpful for us to actually tithe. Some people say, why 10%? Can I do 5%? And I get it. I totally get all the resistance to tithing. If you're poor or you have low income, you think, I can't really afford this. And if you have high income, then it's like, wow, that's a lot of money that I'm giving away. So it kind of gets you on either end. But the nice thing is it's proportional. It's 10%. It's interesting because Swami talked about a survey that was done years ago of adults in the US and the survey asked, how much more income would you need to be happy? And interestingly enough, they said 10%. On average, everybody said if I had 10% more, I would be happy of my income. Well, what if being happy is about giving away 10% of your income? It's a practice that is enhanced and really tends to only make sense when you think energetically about money, that it's something that comes through you. You can't fix it, you can't sit on it. That stagnates the energy. Plenty of energy in the form of money comes to us. Seems like these days plenty is going out. But that's the flow, that's the energetic flow. And then the ultimate energetic oriented techniques that we have, there's many more, but is meditation, and particularly Kriya meditation, because Kriya meditation is about moving energy up and inward in our spines. And it's a very specific set of techniques that we have available to us. The meditation techniques, let me just gather my thoughts for a moment. The meditation techniques are notable because they're connected to this this notion that we talked about calmness. The reading today was, and the affirmation is about calmness. Well, calmness is one of the 8 aspects of God. So of all the 52 readings that we do, this is one of 8 affirmations. And it's always interesting that Swami pairs these with certain teachings. But calmness is a sort of a prerequisite and a co-requisite with our meditation techniques. One of the interesting things about the yugas and the revelation of the yugas is that our understanding in this current age is parallel to or concurrent to the understandings that have been lost in the Dark Ages, but that were approximately across the cycle from us in time-wise. So 500 AD is the low point, so we're about 1,500 years before that. We're about 1,500 years after that. 1,500 years before is 1,000 BCE. So 1,000 BC, there was a very high soul named David. And King David, he became king eventually. And he wrote a lot of psalms. And one of the most well-known psalms is Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Well, the revelation about the deeper meaning of that psalm came to Kriyananda at some point years ago, and Kriyananda mentioned it to one of our sister Gurubais, Mary Kretzmann, who really wanted to delve into maybe each of these phrases in that psalm were about each chakra and the movement of our energy from the base of our spine, the kundalini energy that's trapped, that resides in the base of our spine and can raise up. So this psalm, interestingly enough, the revelation about that came to Mary, and she writes about it. It's wonderful to hear her recording of talking about the meaning of the psalm. You can easily look it up and find it. You just Google Psalm 23 meaning Ananda, and you'll get to her. And I think the link for the recording is still there. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. This is the declaration that the disciple is taking the Lord as their shepherd as opposed to other shepherds that might guide you and protect you. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. That's first chakra. That's being protected. I can lay down like a sheep and be protected and be safe and be grounded in the earth. He leadeth me beside the still waters. That's second chakra. The living waters of our second chakra, the creative, the procreative forces, that when they are still, when they're not going outward in a whirlpool of activity, either creative activity or sexual activity, when they're still, that stillness is a prerequisite for calmness. You know, it's interesting that the 8 manifestations of God, calmness is one of them, and peace is another one. And I often thought, well, maybe they're pretty close and pretty much the same thing. But Swami says peace is kind of like this light, gentle blanket that descends on you when you don't have anxiety, when you're free of anxiety, when you're free of fear. But calmness is, Yogananda says, calmness is much more powerful, it's much more dynamic. It requires energy to put into it and an energetic state to maintain calmness. We kind of tend to think, well, we're going to go meditate, so I'm going to relax and I don't have to put out much energy. But we have to put out energy. We always have to put out energy. So the chakras, the lower 3 chakras, correlate to the upper 3 chakras. So first chakra with 4th chakra, the heart, second chakra with the throat chakra, and then the 3rd chakra to the 6th chakra. Well, this second chakra of stillness is a prerequisite to this 5th throat chakra, which is calmness, which is what we really need, is the state that we really need to be in. Yogananda said that our techniques, and by the way, he said that your energy can rise, the Kundalini energy can rise, not just by the techniques that he's given us alone. They can rise every time we have a loving thought, every time we think kindly of somebody, a little bit of our Kundalini rises. Every time we feel hatred, every time we think unkindly of somebody, it lowers. So it's not just, when we're doing our techniques, when we're doing energization or yoga or meditation, it's our very thoughts, our very consciousness that makes a difference. I caught myself this week, and I can't say I was spot on all the time, but I caught myself being really frustrated and speaking poorly of one of my students who hadn't turned in his assignment, and I finally he didn't respond to my emails for a week, and I called him and left a message. I knew he was treating patients in the clinic, but I caught myself because the pull was to go to one of my colleagues and say, this student, and really not that I would do it with him and not that it would matter to him so much, but there was the downward flow of that Kundalini energy. So all the time we have this opportunity to raise our energies up. And the really good news is that no matter where we are on this continuum, if we're getting tripped up in, lower chakras, if we're getting tripped up in insecurity or anxiety, it doesn't really matter, because what matters is turning the spotlight of our focus and our energy to move upwards. We can move upwards from any level. We can move upwards from any time. What my hope is, and what my desire and prayer is for all of us, is that we use the practice of turning our energies upwards, of rising our own energy, whatever practices we can gather and use in our life, even if it's just an occasional thought, that we gather those and build a storehouse of energy moving in the right direction, so that when God does call to us, whether it's by some form of grace or whether it's by some tragic loss, it doesn't matter, because the call, my hope is that the call will be met with a torrent of positivity, of service, of gratitude, and eventually of self-realization. Let's go get them. All right, so we'll have